Such a beautiful invitation for the Dhamma. So, first of all, I just want to say how inspiring it is to be here and see everyone, this interest in the practice and in the teaching, in the meditation, in sila, in ethics, in the community. It's very inspiring to see you all gathered. And, the conditions are imperfect, and it hasn't deterred you, which is also very lovely. Sometimes when places get well established, people expect higher and higher levels of comfort, and sometimes the comfort is more important than the actual kind of getting down to the practice. So you have a really good, it's a good place right now where there's that strong interest and willingness to endure a little discomfort in order to hopefully gain something precious, from gathering together as Sangha and hearing the Dhamma and settling into your own body and mind. So, the Buddha teaches us that everything we need for full awakening is right here in this fathom-long body, in the old-fashioned language. Everything we need to wake up is right here in this human body. It's a pretty amazing statement. And we're always, looking for a teacher and trying to find someone who can guide us and maybe going from one teacher to another. Sometimes people do that, and we need teachers. We need people who are further on and who can point us in the right direction. And ultimately, we're always being pointed back to what's going on in this body and mind. So it's also said that the human birth is the most precious of births in all the realms. Out of all of the beautiful Deva realms you can be born into, and all the wonderful animals, whales and pelicans and birds, there's all these kind of wonderful animals, but the human realm is the most precious realm to be born into. To be born as a human being is, although it doesn't always feel like that, in a way we can know all of the different realms just even in this life, the hell realms, the hungry ghost realms, the realms of craving, the animal realms. It's all about comfort and the next meal and whatever. The Deva realms, the delighting in nature and then in subtle states of meditation. We can experience all of those as a human being. And because we can experience the whole gamut, and we see, if we pay attention, we see the really, really difficult places, and then it changes. So as a human being, we get to see that constant changing nature of things if we pay attention in the right way. And if we only, if we follow the habits of the mind, then we'll look for what's pleasant. We'll try and carve out a nice little pleasant setup for ourselves and have as much comfort as possible and keep away the difficult stuff. And that process is like an endless journey. So it's in a way our society tells us it's possible, and the system is kind of set up to try and make us, buy the things that will make us more comfortable, and pay that extra for the clothes that will be more comfortable, and the nice car and the nice house and the hot tub and the whatever it is, get more and more comfortable. And yet there is no getting away from the uncomfortable as well. You can't do it. So people maybe, like when I think about before I started to meditate, my mind, there's a lot of discomfort in the mind and in the body. And so I listened to music all the time. I couldn't bear to not have music playing, because then I was left with my mind, and that wasn't a nice place to be. So quick, put another track on. And then starting to meditate, then you start to turn and face what's going on in the mind. It can be a little scary for some of us. And for me, recognizing there's some work that needs to be done. I live with this one 24/7, like it or not. So that I need to be able to, be here without having to always fill my attention with something else or distract myself with something else. But I need to be able to just be here with this body and mind. And the work started with the mind, getting more, changing the ways of thinking, and also with the precepts. Precepts are such a precious support for the practice. It took me a while to align with them, but they're a wonderful support for the practice. They just simplify things so much. We're not keeping on doing things that we regret or that drag our minds down, and then we sit in meditation and we're just sitting with all of that stuff. We can just not do that, and then starting consciously cultivating the wholesome, generosity and kindness, and doing good things because it feels good, because it is good, because it helps others, because it brings us in contact with other good people. And then purifying the mind through the meditation practice, and that involves sometimes sitting through some challenging stuff, and through some intense things at times, and through some beautiful experiences, and allowing the mind to receive all of it and let it go. It's really all about receiving and letting go. And what we tend to do, our habits are more to grasp and push away. I want the nice bits, I don't want the difficult bits. So this is why I wanted to guide you through that meditation, because when we practice with the 3 kinds of feeling tone, then we get familiar with the pleasant, and yet we're noticing it and we're letting it go, and we're noticing it and we're letting it go, and we're noticing it and we're letting it go. We're not trying to hold on to it, because everything changes, as I'm sure you know. So we're not trying to hold on to it, but we're not trying to ignore it either. We're not afraid of it. We can know it and receive it and let it go. And the same with the painful. We don't have to be afraid of it. We don't have to try and run away from it or avoid it or distract ourselves from it. We know it, and then we let it go. And that's not to say we don't take care of ourselves. Obviously, pain has a message. So if there's a lot of pain in the body, then it may be because you need to sit differently, or sometimes lay down. There may be an injury, and you need to take care of that. But often it's just a bit uncomfortable being in the body. There's an ache here and a stiff part there, and whatever, and it's just a bit uncomfortable. So to be able to just receive that and then let it go, receive that and let it go. And then there's the neutral experience, which is a large part of our life, actually. And that's the part that we tend to ignore. So when there's nothing really exciting or dramatic happening, when it's just sort of ordinary, we tend to ignore that. And the more mindful we become, the less of that there is, so that the very, very simple things start to become quite wonderful. The more we develop mindfulness. But as we, until then, or in a day, there'll certainly be times where they're not particularly interesting, or there'll be experiences going on, physical experiences you're not noticing, and that's, it's natural, and yet the practice is to train our awareness to be present, to know what's going on. The 4 establishments of mindfulness are knowing what's going on, understanding the body, knowing what's going on in the body, knowing the feeling tones that are present. This is the second establishment of mindfulness. Knowing the moods of the mind, the state of mind, whether it's small and contracted, or dull, or bright, or spacious. That we know, we know what the mood of the mind is at any moment, and then the content of the mind. Is it essentially moving towards the wholesome or the unwholesome? Put very, very simply, is the mind getting snared up in things that are keeping it caught, or is it attending to what is wholesome, beneficial? So these are, these four establishments of mindfulness they're a practice for the whole of our life, for every moment of our life, to know what's going on here in this body and mind. And I think often we are trained to be in the mind and not really in the body. And even people who do extreme sports, which are very, very the body is an essential part of, and the body is very toned and strong. Often it's still the mind is driving that, and the body isn't necessarily getting much of a say in the matter. So I really like to encourage people to pay attention to the body, what's going on in the experience of being embodied right now. And not just not to have. Sometimes when you say be aware of the body, or be aware of the belly, or if sometimes also doing walking meditation. When the whole practice is about being embodied and knowing the experience of sitting or walking or breathing, that there tends to be this sort of narrative going on in the mind. So we're staying up here thinking about it, or we might even be doing walking meditation and we're leaning over, looking at our feet, thinking about how mindful we are, But whereas what we really want to do is stay centered, and posture is a helpful part of that. Stay, with a sense of uprightness, and then being in the body. So right now, how is it to be in your body? What is it like? How do you know there's a body? Close your eyes for a moment. How do you know there's a body here? What is it? What is the feeling? It's quite an interesting thing to do, because often when we do that, what we feel isn't the same as what we see when we look down. Might be a very different experience, but there's an experience of the body here. And then just to notice what is the relationship to that? Do we have a sense of resentment to the body? Is it not the one we want, not the way we think it should be, not performing in the way we would like it to? Are we feeling a kind of grumbly that it's aging, or it's got aches and pains, or that it's not as flexible as we would like? So just noticing if there's a relationship of resentment between body and mind. So the body is a very good friend, actually. I've come to know over the years. It took me a while, but the body is a really good friend. It's incredibly loyal. I mean, it's going to die, We all got to die, but the mind. It's like, okay, now we're going to do this, and the body goes along with that often. Okay, we're going to eat this stuff. It's really bad for you, but it's nice. Tongue likes it, so we're going to eat this, and then body just deals with it. Or you want to go and do some really wild thing, and you get bruised and cut up, and then the body heals. It's a really good friend. It's amazing. And it gets underrated. So that it tends to be in our society that the mind and the intellect are held up very highly regarded. And the body is, it's often a bit more like a donkey, does the donkey work. So my experience over the years, I mean, I certainly started off with that attitude myself, and then over the years have come to really deeply appreciate the teaching that is going on here and the wisdom that the body holds. So the body isn't afraid of the process that it is part of. The body is part of nature. It's not, the body doesn't mind getting old and wrinkly, getting a bit fat. It doesn't mind what, colour eyes or skin or hair, or whether it has hair or not. Body doesn't mind. It's just nature. And the body's not afraid of getting sick and dying. It's actually very peaceful for the body. The body knows that the elements have come together for a while like this, and they're constantly changing. Skin is falling off all the time, hairs are falling out. It's going on all the time. We've, eating and drinking, it's a process that's, you put food in, and then there's a restroom in the corner over there. You drink and then you have a pee, and then it's this process. And this is how it is, that the body is a process of the elements changing all the time. And the body is very peaceful with that, it's totally cool with that. And it knows that at some point those elements will go back, the earth will go back to the earth, and the breath will return to the air and not be taken in again, and the warmth that the body has right now will go back into, it'll be released from the body, and that it will just return. So the body's not worried about that. It's the mind that gets a little concerned, and it's the mind that we tend to identify with also. The mind that tries to hold on to things, tries to make it the way we want, the way we think it should be. So the Dhamma is pointing us to the truth of the way things are. And the body is the most beautiful teacher of that. It will teach us the way things are. It's not necessarily the way we want them to be. It's not like eternal youth, eternal beauty, eternal strength. And happiness comes and goes also, as does sorrow. These things come and go. So we can, it may take some practice to really embody this, to really fully embody the Dhamma, to listen to the Dhamma through your body, and also to, we use the mind. The mind is also an essential part of the picture. The body and mind need to work together, but the Dhamma can't really be realized through the intellect. It can be understood to some degree. The intellect can really help, can understand the concepts, and the teaching's very beautiful conceptually, the Dhamma. But it's the actual embodiment, the lived experience, the deep knowing that is insightful, that opens up the teaching, the truth, the way we see directly. So I really wanted to encourage you all to take in that practice of being aware of the body and of those three kinds of feeling tone. And the Buddha also points out that pleasant feeling tone, the underlying tendency hidden underneath feeling tone, the pleasant feeling tone, is the tendency towards greed. It's kind of obvious when you think about it. Nice feeling, I want more of it. It's not rocket science. And then hidden underneath painful feeling is the tendency towards aversion. Don't want it, want to get rid of it, push it away. And hidden beneath the neutral feeling tone, which is often most of what we experience, is the underlying tendency to ignorance. So obviously we don't want to be cultivating ignorance, greed and aversion. These are the three poisons that the Buddha warns us about, you know. And so that simple practice of knowing and then receiving and letting go is the antidote. It's very simple. It's not always easy. So we want to notice when we're caught up in aversion, in ill will, trace it back and see where's that coming from. Where's the holding there? Where's the resentment? Where's the pushing away? What's that about? When we're caught up in greed, you know, understanding like where's this coming from? It's an endless process. You get the gratification, you get the joy, and then it changes, and then you want it again. We all know it, you know. We've been doing it for a long time. And then the ignorance, I think, is a very important one, because it's easy to believe that place, the way we're not feeling anything in particular, is a peaceful place. You know, so we can abide in that sort of not really paying attention, thinking that it's insightful, whereas actually it's increasing our ignorance. So to be daring enough to feel and to let go. I want to offer that this morning. Thank you. And I'd really like to invite any questions or comments that anyone has. And even if you want to dispute anything I have said, you're very welcome.
So if you want to ask a... Checking. I think you're all right, Ayya. Painful feeling. So if you want to ask a question or dispute things, although hopefully there's not too much of that, raise your hand and we'll have a mindful mic walker. Do we have a mindful mic runner / speed walker volunteering? Thank you. Miles. And then if you're on Zoom, just raise your virtual hand and we can spotlight you and you can ask in person as well. And if you're on YouTube, just type in a question to chat. And Ajahn Kovilo just popped in. Can we unmute Ajahn Kovilo and spotlight him? We discovered we could do this with the 55-inch TV. So, Ajahn, Namaste Khan.
Hello, Namaste Khan. Good to see you. I've been here for the whole talk, so I didn't just pop in. But yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't have any questions. I just want to hear more. Yeah, thank you.
Nice to see you too, Ajahn. Yes. Oh. And please say your name.
My name is Kate. I have a question about the neutral feelings, because one Dharma teacher said that it is because of ignorance, that's why you don't feel the neutral feeling. But from what you just said, it also, the neutral feeling can also be seen as the background where stillness is, but you don't pay attention to it.
Ah, thank you. So, yeah, I would agree actually with what your teacher said about it. It is because we are ignoring. So, like with the awareness of the body, any part that there's no sensation at all, it's because we haven't really that the mind isn't able to really pay attention fully to what's going on there. And the more we are able to be aware of the feeling tone in the body, then the more feeling there is. So it's more. It can be subtle, but it's more. There aren't those sort of blank spaces. But then you're also speaking about like the more peaceful state of abiding. I would say that's a wholesome state, and that's I wasn't doing the body scan. I wasn't pointing to that. So that is a wholesome neutral feeling that is where there's more of a sense of abiding. But usually even with that state, there will be a little bit of pleasant in there. It is because it's wholesome and it's pleasant. So I think you'll find a bit of pleasant in there.
Yes.
It's not the neutral where you just can't quite experience anything. I hope that answers
Thank
the
you.
question. And I think this gentleman.
My name is Gary, and I was going to go to the same place, and between the two of you, you more than covered the questions and awareness that I had, so I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you.
Except to thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Hello. Hello. Thank you, Ayya. I had a question. You briefly touched on the third establishment of mindfulness with the contracted mind and exalted. And I believe in the beginning of that there's angry mind. And I was wondering if you can differentiate that from the fourth establishment where there's the hindrance of anger.
Yeah, this question often comes up. I don't have a super clear answer, I must say. The difference between the third and the fourth foundations of mindfulness. So one is knowing more the state of the mind, and the other is more pointing to you could say like the thoughts that are going on, the dhammas or the objects of mind. So I guess I would point to, there can be like a mood of the mind that's angry, and then there can be the story of, and it's because they did that. A story would be more like the fourth foundation, or there may be a mind that's flooded with sensuality, and so there's a sort of a flooding, and then there's the story of, the details of what this thing would make the moment more interesting if So I would put it that way, that it's that we can know the moods, and then there's the storyline, and the storyline is it's to be known if one's awareness is strong, to know the storyline, and then to know the thoughts, and then to recognize are these hindrances, or are they leading to awakening? So obviously if it's sense of desire, ill will, hindrances, and if it's mindfulness, and if there's so I had an experience, I mentioned sometimes, of having very deep sorrow come up. Feeling this really deep sorrow and sort of grief, and then the awakening factors came in. So then there was like mindfulness of that. It's like, oh yeah, there's this grief, and it's really embodied, and it's like this, and then being interested in that. And as that was happening, so the grief was, the sorrow was there, but the knowing and the interest, and then the presence, and then the joy arose at the same time. So there was like a wholesome state that embraced the unwholesome. So it's I'd say the fourth foundation is knowing, is the mind leading towards the hindrances or the awakening factors. Just put very simply. This is much more than that, but put very simply. Is it Dhamma? Is it leading towards the Dhamma and clearer seeing, or is it leading towards more and more being entangled? And then the third establishment of mindfulness is more about the environment of the mind. If that makes sense.
Makes sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ayya. My name is Suze. I really appreciated the guided meditation, and My question has to do with when pain is really loud in the body, and I'm aware of the desire to push it away, but then there's some mindfulness of that, and what the skillful means of how much to pay attention to how loud it is, or perhaps to go to places that are quieter.
Mhm.
And so if you could speak to kind of skillful means around painful body sensations. Thank you.
Yeah, so pain is an important part of the body system. So it may be that, there's an injury, and the pain is telling you need to move. You're harming the body. So we have to sort of know our bodies a little bit so that we know what's going on. So if that's happening, then move, Don't force the body to become injured. And, obviously if we touch something that's very, very hot, it's going to be painful, and then we take our hand away. That's good. So that's part of the system, and then there are pains. Well, there are these sort of meditation pains. I don't know if you've experienced those, but these pains that suddenly mysteriously arise when you sit down to meditate, which you don't get when you're on the computer or watching a movie, but when you sit still in meditation, suddenly there's this incredible pain in the hips or the knee or the shoulders or something, and then when the bell rings, it magically disappears. So those pains are, you've got to sort of, they're the ones you can explore, and often they arise because of tension. And so there'll be a sort of holding or a sort of trying really hard, or a forcing, or a sense of like, okay, I mustn't move for this long, and then the tension happens in a certain part of the body or several places. So if that's what's going on, there's various different things you can do. But one thing is to instead of tightening around the pain, to see whether you can make a bit of space around it. See whether you can invite a certain relaxation around it and inside it. That's one way to explore relaxing around, and notice the tendency to contract, and see whether can you just lean back a little bit, or can you just make a bit more space for that, and that can be helpful. Another way is to have touch points. So because what tends to happen is if there's a strong pain, all the attention goes to the pain, and then you get all of the stories of I'm going to be wheeled out of here in a wheelchair, and it's all going to all of that happens. And so one helpful way is to give it some context. So like, I've got to say, for example, I don't, but if I had a really big pain in my right hip, and then I'm like worrying about the right hip, stressed about, tight around the right hip, or averse to the pain and wanting to get rid of that pain. So instead of getting into those pushing and pulling relationships with the pain, okay, there's pain in the right hip. What's my left earlobe? Is there a pain? No, actually, it's actually quite nice. What about the right earlobe? Yeah, nothing special. Left shoulder, a little bit painful. Right shoulder, yeah, it's fine. And just have touch points, elbows, hands, and then hips, left hip, nothing much. Right hip, really painful. Left knee, nothing. Right knee, fine. And so just to have touch points so that you give it a context, so that it's not taking up the whole of your attention. Yeah, I think that's it really. And there's also, with feeling tone, there is this sort of push quality to it. So, with maybe sitting in meditation, we want to feel comfortable and peaceful and at ease, and then this inconvenient feeling arises, and it might be a pleasant feeling. We might want something, and then just noticing the kind of grasping, the kind of intensity and the reaching out of that wanting, which in itself is unpleasant. It's not a pleasant experience. It's not comfortable or peaceful. It's agitated. Or it may be that there's a painful feeling and we want to get rid of it. We want to push it away. and then we notice that push. So feeling tone has a sort of a push to it. So just noticing that, so instead of immediately shifting or saying, I'm not going to move until I'm enlightened, there's this sort of middle way where we're noticing the intensity and the push. And then it may be at some point we need to move, and then it's like, okay, but we're not going to move as soon as it gets uncomfortable. So we notice the push, and then we see if we can relax around it. We check out different parts of the body, and then if it really is like saying, no, I need to move, then you move. That's fine. Then you notice that it's different. As soon as you move, it changes. The pain is different, or it's gone, and then there'll be some other discomfort that will arise. Yeah.
Greetings, Ayya. I recall you mentioned that we cannot reach the goal through thinking of the concepts alone. We need to have the experience. My question is, what is the reason that you differentiate the thinking about the Dhamma from the experiencing of it? One of the reasons I'm asking is because my understanding is that sati, or mindfulness, is remembering, recollecting the Dhamma that we've heard. And also in Bojjhanga Samyutta, Buddha has said that one should think over the Dhamma that one has heard from a virtuous monk, and by doing so, then the enlightenment factor of mindfulness arises, and then he goes through all the 7 factors of enlightenment. So would you clarify what you meant by the distinction between those two, and are you viewing this thinking about the Dhamma as separate from the experience?
It's an interesting question, yeah. So, sati, one of the part of the translation of sati is to remember and to recollect, and it's also the quality of sati. It's, in a way, it's like remembering to be present. So the quality of sati is an opening of the mind in the present to the immediate experience of what's happening here and now. And so that's not going on through the intellect as such, it's more of a chitta awareness, sati. And it also has the quality, like the old translation of sati is to remember, and like the Buddha, you often find that the Buddha's taken a word that's used in the society and then he frames it a little differently. He does that a lot. So sati is one of those words where, if you go back to sort of pre-Buddhism, it'll be remembering, and then the Buddha uses it in a slightly different way, that it's not just remembering, intellectually remembering the teaching only, but it's also remembering the living teaching that is also happening here and now. So certainly to recollect the Dhamma, and also, as we speak now, we're using these English words. I think the English words really don't do full justice to the actual meaning of the Pali words. So to say, to remember the Dhamma, or to remember the teachings, yes, you remember the teachings, and you ponder the teachings, you recollect the teachings, but the insight doesn't happen up here. It happens kind of, it's a bigger, it's a more whole experience. And so what I want to be clear about is I'm not saying that the intellect is not useful on the path. It is, and there are some people for whom that will be the way in, and there are others for whom it will be more of a faith, heartful entryway. We sort of come in with different karma. So if so there are the Dhammanusaris and the Saddhanusaris. So those who enter the streams through Dhamma, through like more, it's all Dhamma, but through more of an intellectual appreciation of the Dhamma, and the Saddhanusaris are those who enter the path through faith and more like a more intuitive way. So it's helpful to know which leaning one has, and if your leaning, which I would guess is more the Dhamma-nusari leaning, then to read the Dhamma, to listen to the Dhamma, to reflect on the Dhamma is an essential part of your path. And what I'm saying is that the insight that arises is not an intellectual understanding. It's beyond the intellect. It's much more integrated than that. So it may be that you approach through the intellect, but the actual insight is much more than an intellectual understanding.
Thank you.
Do you have more? I think we're going to stop there.
Maybe for
Another time.
Individual discussion. So thank you.
Okay.
Ayya.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I have another facet of the third and fourth foundations question. You associated wholesome and unwholesome with the fourth foundation, and I tend to look at it more in the third foundation, kind of the colors of mind, but probably there's different aspects in those two, so I wonder if you could tease that out a little bit. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not sure I exactly got the question.
Well, could you tease out which aspects of wholesome and unwholesome are in the fourth versus the third foundations?
Yeah. They both have, you know, they both have wholesome, like obviously the states of sensual desire and ill will and the contracted mind, they're more unwholesome, and then the, you know, more exalted mind, expanded mind, they're more wholesome. I think it's actually relatively self-evident when you look at it, and yeah, I've tended to, I must admit, I've practiced quite a bit with Venerable Analayo, and through his comparative studies of several different scriptures that have, you know, written down at similar times in different parts of the world, he doesn't say this is the way it is, but he's pointed out that the categories in the fourth foundation that you find in all of those scriptures are the 5 hindrances and the 7 awakening factors. And there are also suttas that point to those pairs. And obviously in the Pali Canon we have a much more complex list, which I always found a little baffling. You know, why is there all of this stuff? You know, it's a lot. You know, so I have tended to practice with the fourth foundation in terms of the, you know, the hindrances or the awakening factors, because I find it practical. So is the mind, are the thoughts, is the content going into the, is it feeding the hindrances or is it feeding the awakening factors? So I practice in that more simple way. Yeah. Tanisabo, Ajanisabo.
Thank you. We're coming to about the end of the hour, but I wanted to make sure I got the chance to ask you a few questions too. One was, the first is we have some young people interested in, and most likely some older people as well, interested in going forth and kind of playing with the idea and you know, contemplating how to balance that with families, education, a thumbs up. So, do you have any words or thoughts for those?
Oh. Well, obviously, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, how do you balance it? It's not really a balance. It's a radical act. You know, you can't keep everybody happy and, you know, meet people's full expectations and be normal and acceptable and be a monastic. It's a kind of radical thing to do, and especially in this culture, it's way counterculture. In terms of family, it varies from family to family. So there are, you know, I know very senior monks, very wonderful, you know, monastics who've been ordained for decades, who have really good insight and who are very inspiring, whose families never ever accepted what they were doing. They always felt it was wrong, or they, just were disappointed in them. And those individuals have had to come to terms with that in their own hearts, because it's what's important to you. Can you live your life by somebody else's expectations? People do it. Or are you going to follow what's really, really important to you? And it comes at a bit of a cost, it's a renunciant life. Sometimes we want to live a renunciant life and not have to renounce anything. But it's a renunciant life, and you never quite know what it's going to be that you have to give up. So I was quite lucky that my mum was supportive once her concern was, are you just escaping from the world? And my response, I took that was a good question. I was like, let me think about that a while, let me ponder that. And then after pondering it, going to the monastery, coming out, I said, frankly, when I'm in the monastery, I'm facing the world that I'm avoiding when I'm not in the monastery. So she was good with that, she got that. And my father deeply had absolute contempt for religion. Did not like religion at all, did not want any associations with anything religious. And we had a difficult relationship for a long time. And then at some point, we both kind of said, okay, let's just get over this. And things have been better since then. There's a whole story to that, but we don't have time right now. So, I think it's a case of, are you going to, how important is it to you? And it's not an easy life. So you want to, I used to try and encourage people, become a nun, it's really awesome. No, it's a hard life. If you really want to do it. I'm not going to encourage you. You've got to have the gumption to do it. I think it's great. I'm immensely grateful I've been able to live this way through most of my adult life, 30 years now. But I don't rally people because it's not easy. But totally worth it.
Gumption is the secret ingredient. We've got that. The next question I wanted to ask is how, I know Aloka Vihara is closing, and I wondered if you wanted to share any words with how you're thinking about that and what would be a helpful way for us to frame that closing and path forward.
Yeah, thank you, Ante. Yeah, so I came over here with a wish to help. I actually didn't really want to be the main one doing it, but many of the people who I thought would do it left. So, but anyway, it was with a wish to make opportunities for women who want to live the monastic life, because it's been such a precious opportunity for me, and I wanted there to be opportunities for others. And in the UK, there are two places where female monastics can live, and they're both with monks, and there's a very big hierarchy between the monks and the nuns, particularly more, a lot in that system, where the nuns don't have a recognized ordination and the monks have. So it felt like, the women needs a bit more autonomy, and that we have our own places, and that we're not always sort of on the side of something else that's going on. So that's what brought me over here, and with this sense of forest and meditation huts and time for practice, and what we found was in the situation that we had there, I'm sure there are many causes and conditions that led to it, but that there weren't a lot of people who were suitable for the monastic life who wanted to ordain. And there was a lot of work looking after forest and buildings and website and giving teachings and having guests coming through and having times in community and also connecting with other bhikkhuni communities. And we were like 4 or 5 monastics, and at one point we had a strategic planner who said, write down all the things you're doing, and then we looked at it, it was like, wow, this is crazy, it's so much work. So what happened with our monastery is that people felt they wanted to have more time for practice. So one of our nuns has gone off to live in a hermitage in Canada, which has already been set up by a lay person, so she can just be there and it's kind of set up. And another is really keen to be more involved in the arts and in ecology, and so she's starting a little place, not to ordain monastics, but as a sort of a center or a temple space that incorporates climate change, art, and Dharma. And then, we have this property that is, it's also the climate has changed a lot. We're going through major climate chaos now. And so we had a forest fire that burnt most of the forest, came within 50 feet of the house. It was only, the house didn't burn down because the fire department were there, otherwise it would have gone. And it's kind of hostile, a little bit hostile to live there. You've got months and months of intense heat, and the feeling like it might just go up in smoke any minute. So we are closing that place, and we'll be there with 2 other community members until the end of the year, and then we'll be there actually there another couple of weeks. And so I'm going to take a sabbatical time, so some time of be partly retreat and partly just being. And I'm looking to be in the Pacific Northwest for that time. I'm actually looking to be up in the Port Townsend area, even though I've not been there yet. Going to go tomorrow for the first time. Somehow I'm drawn to be in the Port Townsend area, and I think maybe living in the fire zone for so many years, and Anagarika Bethany will be with me, we'll be together there. Living in a fire zone, it's really nice to be up here in the cool and the rain and the wind. And I grew up on the west coast in the sort of cold, windy, wet area, so it's kind of nice. So so I'm partly here to visit dear friend Jill, and partly here to see a possible place for that time of quiet practice.
We went for a walk yesterday, and Ayya was reflecting that she really missed seeing gray on gray. We're so glad you're going to be here for a time, and please come and visit us again.
Thank you
truly.
so much. Thank you. And it's really wonderful to see what you're doing, and that you're benefiting so many people, and that you're helping each other, and it's awesome. Yeah.
Before we let you go, just one more 2-part question. Do you have any advice for us as a community, first in how we can support those who haven't been as seen in the tradition, including our sisters in robes? And second, just as a community, how can we grow in a wholesome way?
Well, I think you're doing an awesome job in terms of community. What I'm seeing today, how many people came to help set up and offer meal, and time that you're talking to each other, and that you come and support each other's practice. I don't think I can improve on what you're doing, actually. I think you're doing an awesome job. And it's that combination of, the sort of the formal practice and the rituals. It's lovely that you use the old rituals of requesting a Dhamma talk, and the precepts, which is obviously much more than ritual, but it's like a container. I think you're doing a beautiful job. And then there's, the relational aspect. I think it's also very lovely that there's a little bit of playfulness and irreverence, and a little bit of, and time for you to hang out together and eat together, and this all builds community. And this is a very new community, but look at you all, it's like beautiful. Yeah, and looking out for each other when people need help, and encouraging each other. This is the benefit of Kalyana Mitta, or spiritual companions. If one of you's kind of going off track, or can't keep your precepts together and need a bit of help, reach out to someone, help each other. So I think you're doing beautifully. And in terms of supporting, so it sort of alluded to supporting the less seen. So that's in the Theravada Sangha over the last 900 years or so, quite a while. The female monastics, the female renunciants, haven't had a proper place, really. So they've always been women or female-bodied people who want to live the renunciate life. It's carried on, from the time of the Buddha, from surely before the time of the Buddha, and they've always been these people, and we haven't always had a proper place. So there is now, thanks to the really good work of scholars and Vinaya experts and practitioners, there is now a possibility to ordain, to take full ordination as a woman, which was not possible for hundreds of years. So you've had women in Theravada countries for hundreds of years who've become nuns, but their role is often to support the monks and they don't really have a place in their own right for their own practice. Rarely, I don't say everyone, but rarely. One of my first teachers, Mechi Patumwan, a Thai meditation master, she had a good situation actually as a Thai Mechi, but often the nuns will be working and serving the monks and not even having access to the Dhamma teachings. It's kind of amazing. And also in Sri Lanka, there'll be a lot of support for the monks, and often the nuns are very, very poor. They're just about surviving because they're not really recognized. So I just want to go over time a little bit and really appreciate Bhante Nisabo, who is taking some risks actually in supporting the bhikkhunis. So bhikkhunis, we're fully ordained bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, male, female, same. So Bhante Nisabo, Ajahn Nisabo, is taking some risks in supporting us as bhikkhunis, not just us, but the bhikkhuni sangha. So we have a difficult situation where in order to ordain another nun, we need a group of minimum 5 nuns and minimum 5 monks. Ideally 10 nuns and 10 monks, but minimum of 5. And sometimes it's difficult for us to find those monks. Even though there are lots of monks around, many of them won't support, they won't get involved because it's too awkward for them. It's not, the traditions that they're part of say, no, we can't do that, that's not allowed. And so then that leaves us in a difficult situation where we can't ordain people because there aren't the monks. And Ajahn Nisabo has sort of stepped out, and I think I'm right in saying this, I don't want to put you into any awkward position, and has said, no, actually that's really important to me. I want to do that, and so I'm going to give up some of my privilege. This is basically what Bhante Nisabo is doing. He's going to give up some of his privilege in order to share a little bit with those of us who have less access. So I find that very honourable and really, really appreciate. And it's encouraging to the Western women also, because otherwise it feels like you're sort of entering into a battle, which isn't really what you want to do when you ordain. It's the last thing you want to do, but it feels like you've got to kind of, you've got to work against this sort of force of it's not aggressive or anything, but there's a sense of we're the sort of the problem children, we're the awkward ones, those nuns, what are we going to do? We even used to get referred to as the nun problem, we're the nun problem. No, we're samanas actually. We're practitioners who want to go forth and live the holy life just as our male-bodied brothers also want to. So it's just the same. So yeah, so support the Sangha. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ayya, truly. We brought you in Anagarika Bethany some gifts.
Oh, you're so generous. He's constantly sharing us with gifts.
Alison wrapped this with like a little bow she made. So.
Oh, no, I don't know. I didn't bring you anything. Oh. Bring you our metta.
And you don't have to open it right now.
That's so sweet. Oh.
But if we could all just 3 really hearty sadhus for Ayya Anandabodhi and Anagarika Bethany visiting us would be wonderful. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.